Afternoon. Yes, the day is going very fast for us. Good afternoon. Welcome. First ever ADHD Celebration. I'm so excited to see all these people. Thank you very much for coming. We are doing a bit of a panel thing here. We thought maybe people who are parents of ADHDers or think they might have an ADHDer and want to know a little bit more about, wow, this is a hard job, how can I do this better? Or this is an awesome job, let's celebrate and talk about it. But I thought it'd be great if we had a few parents who have had kids with ADHD and can share some of their stories, answer questions, whatever you guys need from us. So to start off, I thought we would introduce our parents. I'm Michelle Francis. I am a parent of two ADHDers, two boys with ADHD who couldn't be more different from each other. One is a distracted boy and one is a force of nature. I think they're both awesome for what they bring, what their ADHD brings to their lives, and it's made life hard at times, but we've sort of figured out our ways to get through it, and we're still learning, and yeah, it's been quite a journey to be a parent of two kids with ADHD. Next to me here is Michelle Sortie. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Michelle. Same name, totally different person. But you can mistake me for whoever you want. No, I'm joking. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 13, and she's a teen, and she has ADHD. And my younger 2 are 5 and 7. And we don't really know. They're all very different. My 13-year-old is very sort of obvious in her executive function struggles, and my younger 2 have excellent executive function skills, yet are incredibly deeply feeling, and so that looks a lot more like dysregulation. And so we will make sure that everyone is determined what their needs are before they reach probably mid-elementary school, because for our family it's really important to just know as much about them as we can, as soon as we can.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. I work here at the Child Development Center, and I have 3 daughters who all have ADHD, a husband who has ADHD, and Michelle, you forgot that piece. Sorry for the dads, but I say the biggest kid in my house is my husband. And then I have kinship care of my niece and nephew who both have ADHD. They have ADHD and FS, so it shows up differently again. And then my oldest is ADHD and autism, which again shows up differently. And I agree with Michelle, every single one of them is different. The 2 middle that just have ADHD can be almost more difficult to deal with than the rest do. But it's been a journey, but successful. And I've loved the journey every step of the way, because I've always said to my kids, I've learned way more from them than I have ever taught them. Because I've had to be open to learning how do I support them once we got the diagnosis. And I've worked with a lot of parents over the years in a family navigator role and an advocate in the school system. And the key thing that I always found was some parents are worried about labels, and they're scared about having their child labeled. But I look at it as, if you went to the shopping center and your child's allergic to soy, or might be allergic to celery, we have those strange allergies in our family, I have to look at every ingredient to figure out if I can take, and what's that I can make with. And that's what it was for us with our oldest, who is now 34. It was getting to understand her. And the more that I got the diagnoses, the more it put the puzzle kind of together to understand how she worked and how do I support her neurodiversity in a way that works for her and not a way that works for every system. So I've learned very quickly how to advocate for her rights and not system rights.
My name is Ashley Martin-Flatt, and I'm a parent to an 11-year-old with ADHD, and it's been a pretty remarkable journey learning how to parent alongside them. And I'm also a clinical counselor who supports parents who are parenting children, and I think having that lived experience definitely really helps in navigating walking alongside others. And just super happy to be here today and to learn from folks on the panel and to just chat with you two, with everyone here as well. So thanks for coming.
I do want to open it up to questions you might have. I have a few little questions I thought I'd ask the panel because it's been coming up for me sitting in my little doctor's Zoom booth. And so I know that the question is out there. So just one of the questions I thought I would ask for you guys is how easy or hard was it to get your kids diagnosed with ADHD?
As I said, our first is 34, and she was a late diagnosis. She wasn't diagnosed until she was about 12, 13. And again, I would agree, I found it more difficult to get girls diagnosed with ADHD. I think for her it was harder, but once we knew one had it, the hardest part was actually finding a pediatrician. It's the most difficult part, is getting into the pediatrician. But after that, it was fairly simple to get the diagnosis for all 4 kids.
For my oldest, who's 13 now, I think, as I mentioned, her struggles are more executive function obvious, and so I want to call that like a bit of a classic presentation, but I only mean classic in sort of the old stigma type sense of what we think of with ADHD. So it was easy to get her diagnosed because right from grade 1, I started getting a lot of feedback. I heard a lot of negative things about her. Things that, you think your kid's not going to make it. They're not going to get through elementary school. Just a ton of really negative feedback. No one said to me, looks like ADHD, but they said things like, she can't learn. Like that was something I heard in a parent-teacher interview in grade 2, a 15-minute interview. I just sobbed, and said, oh, what do we do now? And she said, we can't really help you. The reality is for her, it was quite easy then to get a referral to a pediatrician. I did have to wait. I went out of the community for the shortest wait list, so I drove to Campbell River, and she did start treatment. Those naysayers didn't really know what they were talking about. She's thriving in many ways. I mentioned my other 2 are much more emotional in their presentation and less executive function. So I am now a different mom because I have a gap. So with her, I had nothing to compare it to and thought she was incredibly perfect. So for me, I was the slowest to the table in that, oh, she's got a different brain. I was like, are you kidding me? This is perfection. Now with my youngest 2, I am like this hypervigilant hawk watching for things that could warrant an assessment. And I'm not getting any feedback because they don't have any of those executive function things. But they do have sustained and prolonged big feelings that are, I would say, in comparison to their peers, more expressed. So I am now advocating that they're not going to be missed. I will likely have to either wait a long time or find a way to pay for psych eds because a teacher is saying, both teachers, they're right on target. They don't warrant any intervention. So really different experiences, and I think the system is challenging. I also think that we're still looking for very specific behaviors that don't fit for everybody.
I wasn't aware that my child had ADHD. All of my kids, I have 3 of them, they all joined our family after spending time in government care. So at home we were spending a lot of time focused on kind of trauma-informed parenting and just really parenting differently. We read a lot about that. And it was the school that contacted us to say like, whoa, like your kid's cool but spaced out all the time and can't ever find his pencil and sometimes only has one shoe on, and I was like, what? Like kind of thing. We weren't really seeing that at home. So it was a bit of a surprise for us that was the case, but then when it was highlighted, I was like, oh yes, okay, I can see now how our adaptations at home had been maybe preventing that from happening there. And so then once we had the school highlight it for us, a really great teacher who said it in a very lovely way, started with all their strengths and then said that I think that they could use some help with this focus. We were able to get into a pediatrician, and to Dr. Francis, and to get that diagnosis pretty darn quickly, which was really, really helpful because now school is a different environment because of that. And now though I can see like what they were talking about, but how we were just changing things at home so that it wasn't an issue at home. But yeah, it wasn't a terrible long process, but I'm definitely thankful for the educated teacher who was able to highlight that for us.
Masking, a lot of people use it for different, basically the kid does whatever he can to be focused and attentive and get work done and look like there's no trouble, but really is working 20 times harder to keep on top of that. And then by the time they get to a place where they're safe and people are going to be able to kind of pick up the pieces, collapse they go. So to someone on the outside, it looks like there's no challenges with focus or attention or impulse control, when in fact that child is doing everything they can above and beyond to maintain their composure and their focus. It's hard because a lot of kids, and I mean sometimes that's wired into your kid, right? Like they don't want to stand out in amongst their friends, or for an adult they don't know well, so they really just pull it together, and then you have this complete burnout at the end of the day. And so to be able to say, you know what, if things are hard, you can ask for help. A lot of other kids have the same challenges. You know, talk about, you know, what is it you're doing in the morning or in the afternoon, when's the hardest time? Like, just sort of dig in and see, like, are there times that are tricky for your kid? Or, you know, are there times where you feel like you're working extra hard or you need a break? And just sort of let him be able to kind of talk through that and let him release that, yeah, wow, I am really, after lunch, I am so tired. And all we did was watch videos all through lunch, and I didn't even eat, and now I'm hungry and tired. It's okay, so what does that look like for you, and what could we do differently, and should we mention anything to the teacher? Just sort of allowing a little bit more freedom, and I would say keep talking to the school too, so that they are aware. It's funny, I'll get, you know, the teacher questionnaires and everything's like, nope, no problems, nothing at all. But then I'll read the narrative, and they'll be like, well, we usually have to prompt them to get started, and we need someone to sit beside, and yeah, it doesn't really do anything with us sitting there, and yet they've checked off no issues. And I'm like, again, like what some people are doing at home are scaffolding their kids so much that there's no issue, and then at school, there's almost this scaffolding that's happening, but then this kid is falling apart in the background. It's tricky. The other place too is, it's not necessarily school, but socially. So the teacher isn't seeing the issue, but they keep getting into trouble at recess, or they're playing by themselves because nobody wants to play with them. So it's sort of trying to make that invisible visible to the school personnel too, so that they really see that this kid's struggling.
My youngest, my niece, she is that hyper-focused on one friend, and it's that one friend for like a year, or maybe, I think the longest one she's ever had has been a year, but sometimes it's even shorter. And it's because they can't hold it together. So she pretends to be somebody with the friend, and then she can't hold it together any longer, and then the true self of her comes out, and the friend can't manage that. And so then the friend will move away, and she's 15 now, and she still struggles with that, and it's been all the way along in school. Her struggle is to find the one friend. They also very often can't deal with multiple friends. Like, none of kids with multiple diagnoses can do multiple friends. They have to have one or two at a time is all they can manage, because it takes so much energy in them. My nephew's the same. Most of his friends, in all honesty, they game, and that's where they talk and they play, but I've listened and they have some really cool conversations. And I come from old school of parenting. In the beginning, it was like, no electronics, I don't want the gaming, and I've learned and listened through our pediatrician. Dr. Cox has been amazing for teaching us to understand, is it my issue or her issue? My issue or his issue? And so I really had to learn to adapt to understand that's where his friend base is. So it's finding, I think, I really tried to make it only work for one. If I could find one friend, I would invite them to go to the pool. Or if they really liked biking, I would pick the kids up and take the bikes. I think it is I think to your question, I think it is very difficult for kids that have very high level of ADHD to regulate more than one friend. My daughter, the oldest one, she still hangs out. She's 34, and she has 4 friends from elementary school she still hangs out with. Because they're what she calls them, her tribe. They're all the same. They all have different quirks about them, but they found each other, and they have just stuck together. So there can be really long friendships too, it's really, I think the nurturing had to come from us as parents to help reinforce that. And I got to know the other parents as well to try and balance out some of those friendships. But I think friendships is hard. It's hard for anybody. Relationships are tough. So I think for our kids with neurodivergence, it becomes a lot tougher.
I just have something to speak to about the masking. I think that it's really abstract, the concept of like when they're masking, are we masking, and especially if we've all been raised to sort of be socially appropriate. And something that was super helpful for me when my daughter was first diagnosed was I picked up somewhere that she has 50% less dopamine than her peers who are neurotypical. So she's trying 50% harder in every situation across the board. So I just decided in my mind that she's trying 50% harder all the time, everywhere, and really started to be noisy about that. So every time I went to the school and someone called her lazy, I would be like, well, actually, she's trying 50% harder than her peers. And so for me, I stopped trying to figure out when she was masking and more just assumed that every day was long and hard and she was working 50% harder. And then it got easier and easier for me to tell like when it was an extra struggle. So she has a few tells now. Hers are that she goes really contained. So she loses a lot of her affect and it looks like she's just gone inside, which I think is like, I literally can't try any harder. So I just want to mention that for me, it was like I couldn't pick them out for a long time. And I'm just going to focus on she's working hard all the time regardless.
The one thing I noticed with masking when he was done, his hoodie would come up. And or his baseball cap would come down. So I think it's finding those signs to know that they've done as much as they can to fit in to what they think they need to fit into, and I'm done. And so then it was the interjection of knowing, hey buddy, do you think you maybe need some gaming time? Or do you want to go ride your bike? It was like knowing there had to be something else, and he might not be thinking about that he's done masking, that he's at his limit, but we could teach him.
Part of another hat I wear is I'm on the CADRA, so Canadian ADD Resource Alliance. It's where we get our guidelines for treatment in Canada. So I'm on the advocacy committee because that's probably the most important part.
Yeah.
And we have a white paper that is actually a private member's bill in Parliament right now, which has 3 pillars. And one of the pillars is we need teachers to be better educated and how to teach kids with ADHD.
Yep.
We keep trying to get more people to sign off so this bill gets approved, but
Yeah.
elections coming, who knows. But always available to talk to schools. So I've talked to a few school groups. I actually have a school in Richmond that has reached out and somehow heard about me and wants me to come and talk to their school group. So myself, always willing to go into different schools. I just gave a packed talk, but we need to be talking to the teachers and the liaison and support staff and everything. So always willing to go in and talk. The fact that NLPS is here, I think, is a positive thing. They were absolutely willing to be here and to provide resources and probably hear the concerns at their table. I haven't been by the table yet. But so having them involved in these events and having them part of the discussion so that they know the challenges and can be on the other side of advocating for our kids, I think is super important. So those are a couple of ways to try and get the message out. Kimberly probably has something to say as the big advocate.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I think you need to know you are not alone in the professional field. As I said in past professional field, I am an advocate and was trained provincially to be an advocate across the province. And got into it because I had the 34-year-old who was 8 and masking everything. Girls are super good at masking. I was like, amen to that one, because the same as myself. I'm very good at being able to fit in. I'm very good at being able to fit. I say my superpower is the fact that I love chaos and I can manage chaos. But that comes from my ADHD because I can be in 12 different places at one time. I sometimes have to find that way to calm myself down so that I can remember what I was going to go do. But I went into advocacy because I was frustrated with how they were identifying, similar to Michelle's story. I mean, this is 20-some years back, but we were told in grade 3 that they would help support my daughter to at least read at a grade 4 level to get her through high school. She's my first. This is my first introduction to like, why is this not working? Not so great teacher, really great teacher, gets it, not so great teacher. Then you get another really good one. It's that roller coaster ride that is hell on our kids because they are trying to figure out all of these different people. I can say from now, looking back, we have still a long way to go, but I'm hopeful. I see the district is trying to bring more awareness and more teaching. But it's I also teach a program on navigating the school system and keeping relationships while you advocate for your kids. And it's really tricky because you're dealing with human beings. And I've done training for principals and vice principals. I've gone to the BCTF to try and train teachers. It's the complexity of each of those positions. And as a teacher, there's a lot of autonomy that comes to what you can learn and what you do in your classroom, which becomes not necessarily a benefit for the diversity of our kids. And I truly believe every teacher wants to do the best, but they're also doing with what they've been taught. And how do we break down those old teaching thinking with what we know today? And I can say as a parent and as an advocate, I find it really frustrating, and Michelle and I were having this conversation yesterday. We know so much more and we know so much better, but we're not doing better. So I went all the way up to the top figuring I could make change provincially on how things are handled, and left the top to come back down because I truly believe this is exactly where it starts. This is how we make a difference. We need to share what we learn and get other people to understand, and that it is going to be a long road for parents to advocate on behalf of their kids. But it's difficult when you walk into a meeting, and this is the thing, I've been doing advocacy for 25 years, yet when I go to the school for my children, I always bring another person with me, because I'm an emotional person. And the minute I'm going to talk about my kids, my heart's on my sleeve. It is not in my head. All my teaching can go right out the window. If I don't have that anchor person to remind me, here's where we're going. And it's a lot of planning before I walk into any meeting.
Things you heard, like go in with photos and notes and plans and everything ready. A couple of resources I often recommend to families. So CADAC, Canadian ADD Advocacy Council, is for you guys to help you advocate. They have some great classroom adaptation lists for elementary, high school, post-secondary, and just executive function.
Yeah, and we're working in a system that has really clear things, what your child will qualify for, and then what they get with those qualifications and what you need. And so there isn't a loophole in their system. I have observed at different schools, they will honor an IEP without a designation at your request sometimes, but it's a lot of paperwork for them, and that's time consuming. And so I think the only way around it, it's not around it, through it, is just showing up and saying, I'm going to be here every day until we find what my child's bar of success is, and provide accommodations and strategies for them to get there. Like, I'm just going to be here. They don't have to have an IEP, they don't have to have a learning plan, but I'm not going anywhere. And so in a way, like, I don't believe that my oldest is successful as a human right now, as a teen, because she got an IEP. She did, but I don't believe that's why. I believe it's because the IEP almost means nothing. It's because I went to every meeting and spoke like so firmly about what was not negotiable. And every single meeting I have heard, oh, she's not even in the top 5 I worry about. Like, if I could have nickel for every time that I said, I'm not interested in those other children. Like, thank you, I'm only here for my kid. And so I just don't get stuck if you're not offered those pieces. They're not the magic maker. The magic maker is you. Like, you are the intervention, you are the person that will change the trajectory of their academics, or their social life, or their outcomes. It's not the pediatrician, although wonderful. It's not the treatment plan. It's not medication, no medication. It is you. Like, they need one caring adult who shows up for them every day, and they will be the best version of themselves. You've already got this.
so you know you're not alone, the CDC has just started back with their family support, family peer-to-peer groups, and there is an ADHD parent peer-to-peer group, and I know the facilitator, she is amazing. And so there are places to go, and the nice thing about it is you can just come and go, and it's the first Monday of every month here at the center, and they have child minding to support the parents who come. And because I think this is the piece, thank you for saying it, you are not alone, and don't ever feel like you need to be alone. You just gotta find your tribe, as my daughter tells me. There are people that care, and it's like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel like you're beaten up, and what am I doing wrong? I asked myself that question so many times. But that's a self-check mechanism, right? And it's like, that's the negative voice talking. So I've learned to change my mind. Yep, life sucks right now. It's not going the way I want it, but here's the positives. I'm here, I'm present. I'm gonna go to this meeting, I'm gonna ask for another meeting. And for all of us parents that are emotional, if you get emotional in the meeting, don't feel like you need to sit there. You get up, you say thank you, I need some air, go and take a moment, come back and ask for another meeting. Don't feel like you have to stay if it's not working for you, okay? And it doesn't mean you don't care about your child, it means you're doing self-care first. And like they say in the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first, because if we're not breathing, we can't help. It's not your system, it's their system, but it's your child. So you have that right to say, this isn't working for me, I need some space, I'll be back, because my child's going to stay.
So thank you very much for attending the parent part. Stay for the job accommodation finish.